as a green, malicious-looking storm cloud was rolling over the town of Hollow's End. A wood-paneled station wagon was driving down Main Street, past darkened shops and empty houses. "Sure is quiet here," Leanne said to her husband Harold, who sat in the driver's seat. "This place is like a ghost town." "I'm more concerned about that cloud," the man answered. "Does it look green to you?" "Yeah," she answered with a nervous glance upward. "I want McDonald's," said Ralph, a bored-looking teenager in the back seat as he played on his phone. "Let's stop at McDonald's." "We'll stop at the first one we see, sweetie," Leanne said without looking back at him. "I don't think this town even has a Burger King," Harold said, sounding devastated. "And where the hell is everybody? No frickin' signals, we have no GPS. And I haven't seen a gas station in 2 hours. We're gonna run out if we don't..." Suddenly a gas station came into view up ahead, appearing out of the green-tinged fog. "Finally," Harold exclaimed. He pulled up to the pumps and got out of the car. Examining the ancient gas pumps, he realized there was no prepay option. He would actually have to interact with a human being. This place really was stuck in the Dark Ages. Unhooking the nozzle, he selected the option for regular gas. But when he tried to pump the fuel, it was like the thing was dead. "Hello?" he called out, looking into the booth of the nearby gas station. He tried to pump the gas again, waving with his other hand. "Little help over here?" No response. "Honey, what's wrong?" Leanne rolled down the window. "Probably one of those places where they want you to prepay. I swear to fuck if they don't take debit." Harold put the nozzle back in place. Then he began to walk toward the booth of the gas station. It was just getting dark, and yet the place had no lights on. He tried the door, finding it locked. The place was closed, and empty by the looks of it. "Shit," he muttered, pulling on the door with one more futile attempt. He looked back at his wife and shrugged his shoulders. As he began to walk back towards the car, rain fell from the sky. Just a few drops at first, but then it began to pour. Harold took a nervous look at the green cloud above him, and a drop of it fell in his eye. It instantly began to burn. "Ow," he said, quietly at first, then louder. "Ow! Ow!" He put his hand up to his now aching eye and pressed against it. When he did, he felt something move beneath his palm. Something which squirmed and wriggled like a worm. At first, he felt disgusted by that thought. But then the thing in his eye burrowed deeper, nestling into his gray matter. And then he was fine with it. "They're closed?" Leanne said as Harold got back inside the car. "Where are we going to get gas? We're almost out." "I want McDonald's," Ralph said again from the back seat. As Harold turned to face his wife from the driver's seat, she saw his eyes were now entirely green, like round, polished emeralds. "What's wrong with your eyes, Harold?" she screamed. "What happened to your eyes?" As her words devolved into shrill screams of terror, little Ralph saw what was happening and noped out of there immediately. He had seen too many horror movies, and knew what happened next. The boy escaped from the car. A moment later, the windows were splattered with blood from the inside. Ralph took one last look back as he ran off through the rain, his head covered by a hoodie. As he turned a corner, the sounds of wet, sloppy chewing began to thankfully fade into the distance. And it was silent again, aside from the noise of the rain. "How the hell could you possibly know all that?" I yelled at Randy, my loyal but incompetent sheriff's deputy. There was no way he could have figured all that out, just judging by the bloody car and the dead woman's body we discovered at the gas station. And yet, he was dusting his hands off like he just solved the whole case. "Simple detective work, dude. You're really bad at your job. Even I can figure this one out, and I'm wasted." He pocketed a flask he'd just taken a sip from, stealthily, without my notice. "As soon as this screwed-up day is over, I'm writing your ass up for drinking on the job. Now, come on. If you're right about this, that means there's a kid running around Hollow's End all by himself. And in the middle of a total shitstorm. Trust me, I'm right. I've got a sixth sense when it comes to these things," Randy said, winking at me. "You're stepping in some of the evidence there, Inspector Clouseau," I said, pointing at the pool of blood beneath his feet. "Oh, it's all sticky." He dunked his foot into a nearby windshield wash reservoir to clean his boot off. We left the crime scene and began to run back towards the cruiser. The green rain was still falling, so we made sure to pull up our hoods and didn't allow any of the water to touch our skin. The last thing you wanted was to get the stuff in your eyes. That much of what Randy had said was all too accurate. About an hour had passed since the strange rain began to fall in Hollow's End. The townsfolk had fled back to their houses, everyone trying to get inside and out of the rain, especially once they saw what it did to their neighbors. Anyone who got the rain in their eyes or in their mouth seemed to go through the same transformation. Their eyes turned a pale green shade, and they basically turned into zombies. All they wanted to do was eat human flesh. The fresher, the better. As if that wasn't bad enough, the rain was doing something else as well. It must have contained some sort of seed for a mutated, mind-controlling parasite plant, one which grew at an exponential rate once it had a food source. If it landed on a person, in their eyes or mouth, it caused the zombie-like transformation. But when it landed on grass or soil, it caused a plant to grow. A horrifying, carnivorous plant which reminded me of the piranha plants in the Mario Brothers games. Hundreds of those plants had sprung up all over town, and we still weren't entirely sure what they were capable of. We'd seen a few that were the size of large dogs, but others that were as big as elephants. And I think I even saw one moving around, using its vine legs to ambulate. But I might have just imagined that part. When it saw me looking, it stopped. They grew fast, and they were hungry. That much I knew for sure. "What's the plan, guys?" Jay, the third member of our trio, asked as we got back into the police car. He had been waiting in the back seat while we investigated the bloody crime scene, which we'd noticed upon returning to Main Street. Jay works as a local delivery driver, but he's also a good guy to have around in an emergency. He deals with a lot of horrifying shit every day, so he's kind of used to it at this point. He was also temporarily in possession of the coolest magical item I've ever seen, a glowing sword made of energy, which kind of resembled a lightsaber, and I thought might come in handy, so I invited him to come along. There were several other groups of citizens capable of combat who were fighting back as well, working like militias throughout the town. We had all agreed to meet up at the town hall around midnight to reassess the threats we were facing. Randy thinks some guy turned plant zombie and killed his wife. Then his son ran off. He made up names for him and everything. What was it? Harold, Leanne, and Ralph? Okay, first of all, I know some guy went plant zombie and killed his wife. Then his son ran off. And I didn't make up names for him. I deduced it all, like Sherlock frickin' Holmes. And just wait. You'll see when we find little Ralphie running around out there, traumatized and begging for McNuggets. Huh? Jay sounded rightfully confused, but I could have almost believed it, since living in Hollow's End does cause one to change irrevocably, due to some sort of cosmic radiation which exists here. Randy could theoretically have developed powers of intuition and clairvoyance, except for the fact that Randy had never shown even the slightest ability at deductive reasoning, in all the months I had known him. Quite the opposite, in fact. "Are you guys just gonna leave that car there?" Jay asked, pointing at the blood-spattered vehicle. "Some kid could find it." "There's no kids running around in this rain. Except maybe that one Randy thinks is out there. If he's right, then finding them has to be our priority. Give Tom a call, Randy. Maybe he'll be willing to deal with it." Tom was the local tow truck driver, but I wasn't sure if he would be out working in this mess. Still, at least we could get the ball rolling on it. "Got it, boss. Now come on, let's go rescue this wayward youth." "Don't use words if you don't know what they mean, Randy. I've asked you politely 100 times. As we pulled away from the gas station, the rain began to slow down slightly. I hoped that was a good sign that it would stop soon. But for now, it was still steadily drizzling. That just meant we would have to be extra careful with whatever we did. It had been dusk when the rain started to fall, but it was now fully dark outside. As we cruised through town, looking for a kid potentially wearing a hoodie, we encountered several plant zombies. They ran up to our car with startling speed, appearing out of the shadows and sometimes getting close enough to pound on the glass. When they did this, I hit the gas and tried to speed away from them as quickly as possible. But it was difficult with the streets crowded with abandoned vehicles and debris. Within just an hour, this place had turned into a scene from an apocalypse movie. I couldn't believe how fast it had happened. A car had crashed into a street lamp up ahead, causing it to tip over and blocking the route I wanted to take. Several cars were lined up near the scene, congesting traffic to the point of being almost impassable. But I managed to squeak past just barely. As I did, 3 zombies ran at the car from all different angles, like a pack of wolves laying in wait. Jay screamed in the back seat as one of them smashed a window back there and began to grab at him, trying to pull him out. I hit the gas, but the scene in the backseat distracted me so badly that I ended up taking my eyes off the road. This was a terrible mistake since there were so many cars everywhere, as well as a postal box which had tipped over and was blocking half the lane. I ended up slamming into something hard enough to set off the airbag, and it knocked me senseless. When I came to, chaos was erupting all around us. Randy was firing a pistol far too close to my ear for safety, and Jay was stabbing things in the back seat with his glowing sword. A window shattered to my left, and suddenly there were hands around my throat, grabbing my neck and squeezing it. Teeth were inches away, a gaping mouth ready to bite me, to turn me into one of them. Blam, 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 blam. Several gunshots rang out, and it was difficult to tell where they were coming from due to my temporary deafness, but I thought maybe they were coming from outside the vehicle. Whoever they were, they seemed to be friendly since the zombies who were attacking us fell one at a time, dropping to the ground. My ears were ringing and I could barely hear a thing. Panting and terrified, I nearly shit myself when I opened my eyes to see a different zombie standing just outside my window. I tried to pull my gun out, but thankfully Randy grabbed my wrist. His voice sounded like a grown-up from Charlie Brown as he spoke, saying something to me that made no sense. I kept trying to get my wrist free. Didn't he realize this thing was going to kill us? It was reaching for me at that very second, trying to grab hold of my seatbelt? Finally, the ringing in my ears died down a bit, and I heard Randy say something. "Dude, that's Bryce. Stop trying to kill him. He's a friendly zombie. He's not one of them. He just saved our asses." I looked at the zombie who had just undone my seatbelt, and saw he was smiling at me sympathetically. His gap-toothed grin was rotten and decayed, but he had kind eyes.
"It's okay. I get that a lot,"
he said, his voice sounding like a dead man's, which I supposed he was.
"Now come on, let's get the hell out of here. There are more coming and your car's on fire."
I saw he was right. The shitty old cruiser had somehow caught ablaze after our minor collision. Go figure. But at least it was a piece of shit anyways, and it gave me an excuse to petition for a new one. The bad news was we kinda needed the car right now. We all got out, and I saw the friendly zombie man was alone. Or at least, so I thought at first. Suddenly a nearby shrub changed shape and turned into a man, crouched down low and holding a knife. He stood up and looked around, checking the area for zombies. Satisfied that there weren't any nearby, he walked over to me and introduced himself.
"Scott Tanaka,"
he said, shaking my hand.
"Nice to finally meet you face to face, Sheriff."
A tree to my right turned into another man, and I realized the two of them were shapeshifters.
"Sherman Davis. I've got combat experience serving over in Afghanistan. Don't worry, Sheriff, I got your back."
I thought for sure I'd spotted all of them at that point, but then a Harley Davidson just behind me turned into a person crouching on all fours. The woman stood up and introduced herself to me as well, after taking a quick look around for any zombies who might be lurking in the shadows. "Susan McClendon. The four of us decided to team up to fight the zombie plant invasion. We've taken out a bunch of these plant zombie bastards, but none of us feel right about killing the infected citizens, unless it's life or death. It's not their fault they got some of that freaky rainwater in their eyes." Speaking of which, Randy interjected, pulling his hood tighter around his face. "We gotta find some shelter now the car's stuck here. Where are you folks been holding up?" The zombie man spoke. He was wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses, and had somehow already found time to light a cigarette. He was smoking it with bloody fingers, leaving red thumbprints behind. I got the feeling he and Randy would get along a little too well.
"I got a spot nearby where we can lay low for a bit. Come on, we'll show you our home base."
We followed the four of them, keeping our heads low as we ran towards a neighborhood nearby. As we were racing towards the house where they were hiding out, I thought about what Susan had just said. What if the zombie condition affecting people was curable? It wasn't something I'd considered when we were being attacked by them outside the forest earlier, since we kinda had to kill them to survive. But now it was really starting to get to me. These people were innocent in a way. The green rain had turned them into mindless, murdering cannibals, but what if that condition was temporary? And even if it wasn't, did that give us any right to kill them? There were so many questions that I didn't have the answer to. The whole thing was a moral and ethical nightmare. Maybe the best choice was just to hide out inside and wait for help from the government or whoever the hell was going to actually intervene. Except, oh, I was the one who was supposed to call the government, wasn't I? I'm the sheriff, after all. That's the sort of stuff sheriffs and police chiefs do, right? Dude, you are like really bad at your job, Randy said, startling me from my thoughts. I turned around and looked back to see he was holding my gun, which had fallen out of my holster somehow. I'd been meaning to get that damn button replaced. It kept coming undone. Randy began to hand the gun back to me, then pulled it back at the last second, teasing me with a smile on his face. I should really keep this, you know? Teach you a lesson about gun safety. Much to my horror, he spun the gun on his finger, and it slipped off almost immediately, flying through the air after discharging not 1 or 2, but somehow 3 rounds. Damn, that's a hair trigger, he yelped, reaching down to pick it up, but I beat him to it. You do know we're in zombie apocalypse mode right now, right? You just told them where we are, dumbass. The shapeshifter zombie crew was looking back at us with a mixture of confusion and horrified rage, as suddenly a horde of zombies appeared from all around us. Run! I shouted, but quickly realized I was the only one who wasn't already doing that. I tried to catch up to the group as we raced toward a nearby house, which was thankfully closer than I thought it was going to be. Bryce led us around back, where more zombies were already closing in. Shit, they're everywhere! Sheldon yelled, pushing one off of him as it tried to grab him and bring him in for a bite.
Oh man, I recognize this dude. He works at the bakery where they make those really good croissants.
He nearly squeezed the trigger of his gun as the thing came at him again, but clearly couldn't bring himself to do it. He lifted his boot and kicked the zombie square in the chest instead, sending it flying backwards.
Get inside,
Bryce yelled, opening the door with a key and holding it open for the rest of us. We're gonna be trapped in there, I responded, going inside anyway. There really weren't many options at that exact moment. Bryce gave me a sly grin and closed the door behind us, bringing down a thick iron bar to blockade the door.
Don't worry, Sheriff,
he said.
I've always got a contingency plan.
After sealing us inside the house, Bryce led us down the stairs into a finished basement. To my surprise, there was a crowd of people down there. They all looked at us with startled eyes as we entered the room, and a few of the children cowered and clutched their parents. A woman rushed over to us in the blink of an eye, her form a blur as she practically teleported across the room. It's okay, everyone. It's okay. They're friendlies. She pulled Sherman in for an embrace, holding him tightly. It took me a second, but I finally recognized her as Elise Batiste, the treasurer of the town council.
I'm alright. I'm okay. Look, we even found the sheriff out there and rescued him from an attack. Figured we'd bring him back here for some of your world-famous bunker chili before heading back out.
I'm not gonna lie, that does sound delicious, I said, my stomach rumbling. I didn't realize until that moment how long it had been since my last meal. It's just stag chili from a can, she said, giving me a nervous smile. So tired of that joke. Every time there's an apocalyptic event, he can't help himself. I couldn't help but cringe at the words stag chili from a can, remembering a terrible vending machine incident from years prior. You know, I'm not really all that hungry, I muttered, my belly making a loud noise of disagreement with impeccably bad timing. Holy shit, dude! They got Chef Boyardee! Randy yelled from the next room over, where I heard cans being rummaged. Beefaroni and spaghetti and meatballs? This place is a frickin' gold mine. He brought both cans out with him, holding them up in the light to check the directions for cooking them. Heat and serve, dummy, I thought to myself, but didn't say out loud. I had personally seen him make Chef Boyardee about 300 times, and yet he still checked the directions every single time.
The sheriff isn't hungry. You can have both of those, Sherman said to him. There's a hot plate in the corner.
Actually, I could probably manage a few bites, I started, before being cut off by Bryce.
Hey, Sheriff, let me introduce you to the other survivors. Maybe you met some of these folks before, but maybe not. I keep forgetting you're still new in town.
The smell of tomato sauce and sodium-laden chunks of meat wafted over to me as he dragged me towards a group of people. My eyes kept drifting back to the microwave, and to Randy with his smug little grin. He knew I was starving, but he was going to house both those cans of Chef Boyardee without saving me a drop. I had no doubt. Do you have those mini raviolis? I heard myself asking, but was overridden by a question from a woman who I was now standing in front of. Sorry to bother you. I just wanted to introduce myself, she was saying. I'm Lisa from Lisa and the Cult Jam. We play every Friday night at Raymond's place. Maybe you heard of us. We're kind of like local celebrities in Hollow's End. Parsons a frickin' Boy Scout. He doesn't like music, bars, or fun, Randy shouted from his station near the microwave. He opened the door momentarily to stir the tomato sauce, then shut it again, giving me a thumbs up sign. "Oh, right," she said, sitting back down among the hooded figures I presumed to be her bandmates. "Randy comes to see us every week. You should stop by sometime." I looked over the hooded figures, who reminded me vaguely of some other guys I knew from around town. "You all aren't Subterraneans? No. We're in a totally different cult. Ours is way better." "Oh." A strong hand grabbed me by the shoulder and spun me around. The man was skinny and tall, with a gaunt face and large lips. "Raymond Jaggers, put her there, bud," he said, shaking my hand briskly. "You thinking about coming by the club sometime? You should. Randy comes by practically every night, and you should see him on Thursdays. For open mic night." "That's about enough of that," a red sauce-lipped Randy interrupted, standing between us and trying to pull me away from the man. "Come over here, Sheriff. I got a half-eaten bowl of beefaghetti with your name on it." I tried to pull away from him, but found his grip was very strong. "Did you say open mic night? As in, Randy does stand-up comedy?" I began, but my deputy was now trying to forcibly pour boiling hot tomato sauce in my mouth to shut me up. "Please stop that," I said, pushing him away and causing him to spill the red sauce all over the floor. "We'll talk more about your stand-up routine later." A dog came over and began to lick up the sauce from the floor, thankfully before our host noticed it.
"Fine. If we survive this, you can make fun of me all you want for having a hobby. But first, eat up, Chucklehead. We need energy if we're going to kill those damn plant zombies."
"Kill them?" a small voice asked from beside us. I looked down to see a boy, not even waist height. "You're gonna kill the green-eyed people?" His eyes were filled with tears, making me feel extremely guilty all of a sudden. I began, unsure what to say. "My daddy got the rain in his eyes, and my mommy said he's sick, but he's gonna be all better soon," he blubbered, the tears streaming down his face steadily now. "Oh no," I started. "Your dad's name isn't Harold, is it?" He looked up at me, confused. "No, it's Daddy." A hooded person with horns, wearing a mask, came over and began to comfort the child. They looked up at us momentarily, as if judging whether we had intentionally upset the boy. I saw their pupils were cross-shaped amidst their honey-gold eyes. Long, dark hair framed a tanned face, with bangs covering most of their features. For a moment, I wasn't sure what to say to reassure them. "Well, we're doing our very best to find your daddy and bring him back safe and sound," Randy said, doing a surprisingly good impression of a responsible person. "But just to clarify, when your mom and dad talk to each other, do they ever refer to themselves as Leanne or Harold? Because it would really help me out of a jam." The boy screwed up his face as if preparing to cry and then ran off. "That was not my fault, okay?" Randy said. "I was trying to comfort the child. The boy just has no social skills." The tall, horned, and hooded person looked at Randy coldly. "Randy, you're an ass." "Max, you're a librarian. Who even reads books anymore? Nobody. Your job's gonna be obsolete in like a week. But that wasn't my fault, okay? I think I'm starting to get my powers after all these years living in Hollow's End. It's been so long, and I think I'm finally starting to get my sixth sense. A feeling of premonitions and hidden influences." "Do you two know each other?" I asked, ignoring Randy's blathering. Their backs stiffened at the question, but neither responded. The tension was palpable. Finally, after several long moments, Max spoke. "Randy used to come into the library fairly regularly, but, there was an incident."
"Oh, an incident? Is that what we're calling it now?"
There was another tense moment of silence before I asked the question on my mind. "What the hell happened?"
"Nothing," Randy quickly shouted. "Now, come on, eat some Boyardee and let's get the hell out of here, man. We're losing daylight."
"Not until I hear the story. This is gonna be good, I bet." Max started chuckling, but Randy looked more annoyed than I'd seen him in quite a while. I got the feeling I'd have to drag the story out of him later, with several drinks.
"Would you drop it? There's a kid out there trying to survive on his own with no one to protect him."
"Little Ronald," I said sarcastically. "And he's dying for some Wendy's, right?"
"You know that's not what I said. Now don't try to confuse the issue. I got $20 riding on this."
"How? With who?"
"You. Who else?"
Just as he spoke these ridiculously untrue words, there was a loud crash from behind us. People were screaming as the noise got even louder and the air filled with a cloud of dust. Through the brown haze, I barely caught a glimpse of enormous vines and roots crashing through the cinderblock walls of the basement, causing them to collapse. And then a huge, toothy face like an oversized Venus flytrap was looking in at us, grabbing people with its huge, viney arms. "Shit," Randy said, pulling out his gun. Jay put down his bowl of Chef Boyardee, which he had been quietly consuming, and readied his glowing sword. To be honest, I'd kind of forgotten he was there. The guy was so quiet sometimes. But Max beat us all to the punch. The horned and hooded person who had been standing before us a few moments before began to transform, turning into a formidable creature. I didn't get a great look since it was gone in an instant and disappeared into the cloud of dust. Screeches of anguish came from the plant monster a moment later. "Okay, Max has got this. Let's get out of here," Randy said, holstering his gun. Jay followed suit, and I figured they knew what they were talking about since both of them knew Max better than I did. "What was that?" I asked as Bryce and Sherman emerged from the dust. "Fabulavore," Jay responded. "They usually consume stories, but I guess today's an exception." A shape-shifting monster librarian who consumed stories as a food source. I need to get to the library more often because that sounded badass. Now I wanted to get the story out of Randy even more.
Come on, let's head out the back, everyone,"
Bryce yelled, and I saw the survivors were forming a chain and were trying to escape while Max had the giant plant monster distracted. The three of us followed them out through a narrow, hidden tunnel, which brought us up to street level eventually. Judging by the distance we had traveled underground, I figured we were a couple blocks away from Bryce's house. I was going to ask him if he had a permit for this monstrosity of a bomb shelter escape tunnel, but then thought better of it. He was saving our lives, after all. Once we were up in the open air again, I tried to decide what to do next.
"We need to find shelter, and a working vehicle if possible,"
Sherman said, telling me what to do next. "And we still gotta rescue little Ralphie," Randy said confidently.
"Who the hell is little Ralphie?"
Bryce asked. "Oh, nobody. Just a kid Randy made up. We found a tourist car full of blood and a dead woman inside, and he deduced it all like Sherlock Holmes. His words, not mine."
"Okay. Well, we will keep an eye out for this imaginary child, but I really think finding a safe place so we don't die should be our first priority. Does everyone agree?"
Everyone but Randy agreed. "Majority rules," I said, looking at Randy. "Come on, I think I know where we can find a vehicle and shelter, if I remember correctly." My deputy was visibly upset by this decision. "And maybe we'll find a little lost boy named Ralphie along the way." "Deal. And don't forget, you owe me $50 if I'm right." "I thought it was 20. "Oh, right. So you agree it was a $20 wager," Randy said, pulling out a small black notepad and writing in it. "I got you down for 20.
"Can we please get the fuck out of here?"
Bryce asked desperately.
"There's zombies literally right there."
I realized they were waiting for me to lead them after several excruciating moments of silence, and we began to run. I was just praying that Muriel was home, and that her van still worked. As we led the terrified crowd of innocents through the streets of Hollow's End, I was once again reminded of just how messed up everything had gotten. Part of me couldn't help but wonder if it was all somehow my fault. I traced back the steps of my existence, all the way to the point where I arrived in Hollow's End. I had been summoned by a letter stating that I was elected to the position of sheriff, even though I had never stepped foot inside the town. Since then, it had been non-stop madness, with everything moving so fast I couldn't even pause to process things. Magical monkey paws, portals to other worlds, an egomaniacal billionaire, and a zombie outbreak. Correction. 2 zombie outbreaks. And I had to ask myself if I had made this place worse since my arrival. The answer was, seemingly, yes. Hollow's End had been hit by some horrible events recently, and things only got worse after I moved here. But was that really my fault? "Is this my fault, Randy?" I asked my deputy quietly as we were moving through the streets, hoping nobody else would hear. "What are you talking about, boss?" "You know what I mean. All this crazy shit started happening when I arrived in town. Monkey paws, the multiple zombie attacks, the weird plants. It's like I opened Pandora's box somehow." The group had stopped momentarily for a break, and I paused to catch my breath as well. "You can't blame yourself for the weird shit that happens in this town," Randy said, giving me a half-hearted pat on the back, and drawing a few curious glances from the others. "Even if it is sort of your fault. I mean, this place was kind of fucked even before you got here. Thanks, Randy, I said sarcastically. Then I remembered who had actually made the monkey paw wishes, and who had really caused all of this to happen. Wait a second. You're the one who used the cursed monkey paw. You're the one who started all of this, not me. And you're just going to let me take the blame? Oop, looks like the group's moving again. Well, I better step on it, boss. Before I had any time to berate him further, a piercing scream rang through the air. It sounded like a little girl or maybe a little boy, and they were in trouble. Help! The voice called out again, and I caught sight of a small body running through an alley across the street, being chased by multiple slobbering zombies who were shambling after him. Shit, that kid's in trouble. You all keep moving. Randy and I will go try and save him. Jake, get everyone to Muriel's house for cover. If we can't get over there soon, we'll all rendezvous at the town hall at midnight, just like we planned. Jay nodded, leading the group away from us, his glowing sword in hand. I really needed to find out where I could get one of those.
Are you guys sure you don't need any help?
Sherman asked.
I mean, you did almost die earlier. We had to save your lives twice, remember?
We'll be fine, I responded through gritted teeth. We've got this. Come on, Randy. Randy hesitated. Are you sure you wouldn't rather go alone? I mean, there's only like 6 zombies over there. You could definitely take them by yourself. You're coming with me, tough guy. Don't you want to see if that kid is little Ralphie? Come on, let's see if you earned your $20. Maybe you really do have psychic powers after all. I doubted it. Good point. Get ready to cough up cash, Parsons. He pulled out his gun and began to run far too quickly for my liking, reminding me of a child sprinting dangerously with a pair of grown-up scissors. Sherman gave me a side-eye look as if quietly saying, "How do you put up with that?" and then shrugged and walked away. I hurried to catch up with my deputy, hoping it wasn't too late to prevent him from doing anything too stupid. When I caught up with Randy, he was busy shooting a zombie in the face with his gun. The rain was still pattering down on us from above, but the storm clouds looked thinner now, less substantial, and I could almost see the blue sky between the bumps and folds of the clouds. Maybe that meant it would stop soon. Stop shooting them, I scolded. We might be able to save them, remember? Who knows? Maybe there's a cure for this, whatever this is. Remember the Crimson Eye Plague? If we'd killed everyone who got infected with that, there'd be a lot more dead innocent people. Oh yeah. Sorry. Next time I'll just let it eat my face. Randy rolled his eyes. Come on, Mr. Boy Scout. I saw him go in there. He pointed at a door which led into a building from the alley. I wasn't totally sure what the building was, but I could hear high-pitched screams of terror from inside, likely from the child who we'd seen being chased. I yanked on the door handle and it opened easily. Unlocked. Strange for a rusted door entering into a downtown building from a back alley, but this was Hollow's End. Some people around here like to leave their doors unlocked, ajar even, just begging for an intruder to enter. They can really save on the cost of fresh meat that way. I had heard that one monster in town was actually a building. It blended into its surroundings to make itself look like an old video game store, using the name Kai Gaming. The place lured unsuspecting victims with promises of discount games and electronics at low prices. But once you got inside, I found out about that one the hard way. That fucker almost got me on Black Friday last year. Barely made it out of there alive. I don't like this, I muttered, entering the dark building and thinking about that particular monster attack at the same time. There were no lights on anywhere, and all I could hear was the sound of a small voice begging for help somewhere up ahead. I pulled out my flashlight, holding the beam under my gun as I pointed the revolver ahead of me. Something I had seen someone do once on a cop show, and it looked really cool. I'd always wanted to try it. Randy was behind me, his flashlight beam unsteady as his trembling hand shook with nervousness. The screams were growing louder, and more panicked. Shit, there he is! Randy pointed his gun and began to fire rapidly, taking panicked shots that mostly missed their targets. Stop! I yelled. You might hit the kid. His accuracy was terrible, and I could see the kid was pretty close to where his shots had landed. The child was hiding behind a large chest, which was sitting beside a mirror. I saw there were stage lights overhead and realized that we were backstage at some sort of playhouse. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw a curtain to our right which separated the space between us and what would be the audience. One of the zombies had been hit with a headshot, causing it to drop with a loud thud to the floor. The rest began lurching toward us, now going for the more obvious target since we were out in the open. You distract them, I'll go get the kid. We'll meet outside in 2 minutes, got it? No way. Randy shook his head. Nice try, buddy boy. I'll go get the kid. You distract them, and we'll meet outside in 5 minutes. Why did the time... Never mind, just go. I ran off towards the curtain, which opened onto the stage, whooping and hollering as loudly as I could. The crowd of zombies turned sharply toward me and began lurching after me, and my heart rate immediately sped up to 150 or so. There was something about the idea of zombies that had always creeped me out, ever since I was a little kid. Just the idea of something that can't be stopped but just keeps coming and wants to eat your flesh and brains has always made me want to avoid the zombie apocalypse at all costs. And now I was going through it for the second time. Glancing back over my shoulder, I saw the group of zombies pursuing me, as Randy approached the child hiding behind the trunk. Over the noises of snarling ghouls and teeth snapping, I heard his voice speaking low and whispering, "Hey kid, it's okay. I'm here to rescue you. My name's Randy. I'm a police officer. What's your name?" "I'm Ronald. Ronald McDonald. My dad killed my mom and my sister got away, but I don't know where she went," Randy replied without a moment's hesitation.
"Fuck. That really sucks, little Ronnie. Okay, I'm really sorry about your parents, but I've got $10 for you if you can do me a little favor. I'll explain on the way."
And with that, the child took his hand and they began to run. I broke through the curtain separating the backstage area from the auditorium, expecting to see an empty playhouse. But instead, I was greeted by a few dozen zombies. Evidently, someone had been putting on a small community play, and the place had been invaded by ghouls just prior to the performance, causing many inside to become infected. Playbills, drinks, and snacks were scattered on the floor, instruments left abandoned in the pit in front of the stage. Ushers wandered the aisle still dressed in their uniforms, with bite wounds on their necks, shoulders, faces, and arms. I was already running from one small crowd of zombies when this new, much larger group joined the fray. I went from feeling terrified to a state far beyond that. A panicked fever that kicked me into overdrive, causing me to run faster than I'd ever thought myself capable. Feeling as if I were fueled by some otherworldly power, I began to take risks I never would have considered. I leapt into the air, stepping on the heads of ghouls as I leapt cat-like from one to the next. When there wasn't a head to jump on, I used the backs of seats, the walls, the concession stands, and garbage cans, until I found myself, somehow, miraculously standing outside. Zombies were beating against the glass and slobbering on the windows at the front of the playhouse, grabbing the door handle but unable to comprehend the concept of pulling on it to open the door. If it had been a push lever, we would have all been really fucked, but it looked like a quarter of the town was contained inside the playhouse, which was actually quite convenient. Maybe there was a way to fix this after all, some way to cure them, and containing them was a good first step. An idea was starting to form in my mind, and I began to walk towards the back alley where Randy was hopefully waiting. Part of me really wanted to tell him about my newfound powers, how I just basically gained superhuman abilities to escape the zombie horde inside. But on the other hand, that would just make him jealous. He clearly didn't have his powers yet, even though he'd lived here his entire life. I got around to the back of the playhouse and saw Randy and the boy waiting for me. Before I could even open my mouth to speak, my deputy did something I hadn't thought him capable of. He told the truth.
"You were right, Sheriff," he said. "I didn't deduct anything. This here's little Ronald. Looks like he's got a sister who's missing too. We're gonna need to go look for her, and we need to get him somewhere safe."
"I'm helping you look," the kid shouted, much louder than I would have liked. "I know my sister, and I know where she'd be hiding. You have to let me help you."
"Shh, keep your voice down," I said.
"We need to stay quiet or we're going to attract the wrong kind of attention." The boy looked at his feet.
"Sorry, you're right, it's my fault all this happened. I wanted them to stop at the gas station. They didn't even need gas. I wanted a snack, and I kept bugging them for some M&Ms, and it's all my fault. Mom wouldn't be dead, and Dad wouldn't be a frickin' zombie if I just..."
Randy put his hand on the kid's shoulder reassuringly.
"We all make mistakes, Ronald. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes I even forget my own name.
Randy!" I yelled louder than was reasonable, and a moment later there were zombies on us from every conceivable direction, which was 2 directions because we were in an alley. Randy and I both pulled out our guns and began to fire, carefully picking off the ghouls one by one with headshots as they raced toward us. Each time I hit my target, I winced, knowing they were citizens of Hollow's End. But this time, we had no choice. It was either kill or be killed. As I reloaded my gun and Randy ran out of bullets at the same time, The zombies got within steps of us, reaching out their bloodied fingers to disembowel us, and I began to suspect it would be the latter. The ghouls were inches away, their faces so close I could smell their rotting, bloody breath. My hands were trembling as I reloaded my gun, one bullet at a time, refilling the barrel of the old-school revolver. Unable to finish loading all the chambers, I dropped the remaining bullets to the pavement of the alley and spun the cylinder back into place. In one lightning-fast motion, I raised the gun up to the closest zombie's skull, brought back the hammer, and pulled the trigger. Brains and bits of bone exploded all over my face, warm and damp. I aimed the gun at 3 more targets in the next half second, as my reflexes and speed kicked into overdrive once again. This time, I used the empty gun as a weapon once its bullets were spent, driving the butt of the revolver into every nearby skull until we were alone in the alley once again, surrounded by the corpses of zombies.
"What the hell?" Randy shouted. "You got powers? You only lived here a few months, not even a year yet, and you get superpowers?"
He was huffing and puffing, clearly angry, but I tried to distract him somehow. "Come on, we made too much noise. Let's get out of here." I looked down to where I thought the kid would be, but he wasn't there. Little Ronald was gone. Shit, where'd the kid go? Weren't you watching him? He probably scared him going all Matrix on those fuckers. How the hell did you even do that, boss? You know what? Never mind. I don't want to know. I'll get my powers one of these days, and they're gonna be cool as hell. Way cooler than yours. Even though that was pretty badass. Okay, one other thing before we go looking for that damn kid again. Can you please stop telling everyone you're now the world's greatest detective because you ate the previous greatest detective and absorbed his powers? We're in the middle of a zombie outbreak, Randy. You're gonna get yourself shot again. No can do, boss. It's the perfect backstory for the situation. And you have to admit, I wasn't that far off. Ronald, Ralphie, it's basically the same name. Not to mention the fast food connections. And I still haven't asked him about his parents. I am not going to debate with you about this right now, Randy. There's a kid on the run, and I have no intention of talking myself out of a $20 bill. You can pay me on Friday. The kid's probably off looking for his sister again. He can't have gone far. The two of us began to search the nearby alleys for little Ronald, hoping we would find him before any more zombies managed to find us. Luckily, we spotted him about a block away, running through the streets, and managed to catch up with him after a prolonged sprint. I was winded after the run, and Randy was still 2 blocks away trying to catch up. I waved at him to let him know I'd caught the kid, as the boy tried to break free from my grasp and run off again. Hey now, come on, there's no need for that. Let me go. I'm gonna find my sister. You guys are weird, I don't like you. That guy tried to change my name. Look, I get it. This whole town is a bit strange, kid. Randy especially. But you get used to it after a while. We're good people, though, I promise. We're just trying to help you. He wasn't listening, and I tried one more time to convince him. Ronald, hey. He looked up, startled by the use of his name. I'm so sorry about your parents. This must be like a nightmare for you right now. I can't even imagine what you're going through. I can't even imagine how hard this must be. He stared up at me, defiant, for another few moments. And then his mouth twitched like a defective animatronic. His face began to break, slowly at first. His mouth twisted in places, swiveling and shifting as his eyes welled with tears and his cheeks began to fill with redness. And then he was sobbing, his mouth open and rivulets of tears running streaky down his face. He hugged me then, like a kid who has no one else left in the world. He embraced me and I hugged him back. He wept into my shoulder and didn't stop for several long minutes. I have to find her, he bawled. She's all I've got and I just ran away. I left her behind. By then, Randy had finally caught up with us. Is everything okay? He asked awkwardly, and I shot him a look. Everything is not okay, Randy. This child's parents just died right in front of him. Or maybe one of them can still be saved if we find a cure for this zombie plague. I hope that look said. Got it, Randy muttered, as if he'd read my mind. Ronald tried to wipe his face, as if to erase any evidence of crying. And then he sniffled and said, Can we go find my sister now, please? Yeah, of course. We'll find her, I said. Where do you think she would have gone? He thought about this for a few seconds. If she's feeling like I am right now, she's probably hungry and thirsty. As strange as it is to say, I think she might have gone back to the gas station where this all started. There's got to be food and drinks inside of that little shack there. And She might want to check on Mom, see if she's okay. Even if she didn't want to look, I think she'd want to know for sure if she's... He didn't finish that thought, and I tried to distract him from it as quickly as I could. Let's go take a look. You're a smart kid, Ronald. I have a feeling you might be right about this. The three of us took a walk through town, heading back towards the gas station. At least it wasn't far from our location, since we chased the kid in this direction when he tried to get away. After a short walk, we found ourselves approaching the grisly scene once again. The car was still there, just as we'd left it. The back door was hanging open, and the windshield was covered in blood from the inside. Hang back a second, Ronald, I said as we got closer. I'll check her pulse. You don't need to see this. He listened, his lip quivering as he stood back a little ways. I reached my hand into the car, prepared to touch the woman's bloody neck, even though I knew there would be no carotid pulse. She wasn't breathing, and her face had turned a shade paler than before. Ronnie? A voice said from behind me, causing my heart to skip a beat. I spun around to see a girl, who I presumed to be Ronald's sister, emerging from the shrubs beside the gas station. She must have seen us coming and hid there, not knowing if we were a threat. Wendy? Ronald called out, and I did a double take. Her name is... Shut up, Randy, I snapped. Oh, like you don't think that's even the least bit. No, I don't. I tried to silence my deputy once again, but the kids weren't even paying attention. The boy had run over to embrace his little sister, and they were both crying in each other's arms. I felt terrible for them, but at the same time glad they had reunited, and I was happy that I had played at least some small part in that. Well, I guess we know these guys aren't the classic Night of the Living Dead zombies, Randy whispered, looking back over at the woman in the car. She would have come back to life by now for sure. Fortunately for us, this really increases the chances that the government won't drop a nuclear bomb on us if they find out about this. What the hell are you talking about, Randy? He turned away from her to look at me, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end for some reason. Duh, the zombies. Bites don't infect you, causing you to turn into one of them. At least, not for a few hours, anyways. She'd be up and walking by now if that was the case. A growl came from the passenger side of the car, and I jumped back. Randy noticed the sound an instant later than I did, and by then it was too late. She had already grabbed hold of one of his arms, and was bringing it up to her mouth like a turkey drumstick at Disneyland. Hey, get her off of me! Hey, Sheriff, get her! Ah! Before he could pull away, she had his forearm in her mouth. She was freakishly strong by the looks of it, and my deputy couldn't get out of her grasp. I pulled on his arm as he tried to get away from her, and the two of us struggled against her like a couple of dog parents trying to get a roast from a misbehaving Doberman. Ow, 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 ow! Randy complained as the two of us pulled on his arm harder and harder, trying to get it away from her. She was so strong that even with all of our effort, it was nearly impossible. Finally, we managed to yank the bulk of his arm out of her grip, but the damage was already done. There was a mouth-sized hole missing from Randy's arm now. The woman was chewing on his flesh like a too big wad of bubblegum. Aw, man, now I'm gonna turn all zombie and shit, Randy groaned. Without warning, he removed his gun from his holster and started handing it over to me. Well, might as well shoot me now, boss. I'm not cut out for immortality. I always wanted to die young and leave a pretty corpse. So much for that plan. The two kids were running over, and I had to simultaneously hold them back from their ravenous mother, while trying to explain to Randy that I wasn't going to shoot him in the face. Whoa, kids, hang on. That's not your mother anymore. Not right now, she isn't. And Randy, I am not going to shoot you with your service weapon. Do you have any idea how much paperwork I'd have to do? Oh yeah, good point, he said, taking the pistol back and holstering it without further debate. She's a zombie now? Ronald said, his face scrunching up and getting ready to make more tears. Only temporarily, I said, trying to think of what to say. Just until we see the local, scientist, doctor person, and get the cure. I was really hoping that would work. I mean, I had just come up with it on the spot, and it was a ridiculous lie. But they were children, after all. Kids believe whatever grown-ups tell them, right? Really? Do you really think we can cure it, boss? Randy asked, sounding hopeful. He was holding his arm up over his head to stop the bleeding, and I wondered briefly if that would just speed up the zombie infection process, sending more of the virus straight towards his heart and brain, where it would then insidiously spread throughout his system. Sure, I said, a little too loudly. Definitely. Randy frowned slightly, as if he could hear my inner thoughts and knew they didn't quite line up with my words. But then he smiled amicably, and I figured I'd convinced him.
All right, lead the way, boss. Where's this fantastical scientist capable of curing supernatural viruses?
I drew a blank momentarily. But then I realized there actually was someone in town kind of like that. In fact, they would probably be working on a solution to this whole dilemma right now. Maybe my subconscious mind had known that and just took a minute for the rest of my brain to catch up. Right this way, kids. And Randy. They don't live too far from here. Hopefully we can make it there without any more close encounters. Bye-bye, Mommy, Wendy said, waving at the woman in the car, still chewing on a tough piece of meat she'd removed from Randy's arm. We'll be back to fix you. The woman in the car actually seemed to smile a little bit at that, and I wondered if there was some small vestige of her brain that was still functioning, or something more than that. Maybe we really could fix these people. Maybe. For Randy's sake, I hoped we could. The office of Dr. Raison Detra was located around the back of her house. As we approached the door, I felt my spidey senses tingling. Hang on, guys. Something's up, I said, holding back the kids and Randy. My eyes traveled down to see a tripwire which had been set up just in front of the porch. If I had kept walking, I would have run right into it. There's a wire here. You're going to need to step over it. Not sure what it does, I said, pointing it out to the three of them.
That was a close one, boss,
Randy said after the kids had joined me on the porch.
It's a good thing you were paying attention. I would have walked right into it.
He interrupted himself by accidentally stepping on the tripwire. Luckily, he slipped at the same time, falling flat on his face right as an arrow spit out from a hole in the facade of the house. It flew just over his head, embedding itself into a tree on the other end of the yard. Thunk.
Holy shit,
Randy screamed, getting up from the ground.
That could have been my face.
The two kids standing beside me looked less than impressed. You guys are police officers? Ronald asked uncertainly. Yes, we're police officers. I'll show you my badge in a minute. That's always something you should check. Don't just believe people when they tell you they're cops. She looked at me with even more concern written clear across her face. Except for us. We actually are. Even though my deputy seems more suited to work at the circus some days. I said, my dad joke clearly not landing.
Hey, I told you about my time as a circus clown in confidence,
Randy objected. And at that moment, the door in front of us opened, spilling soft yellow light onto the darkened porch. What are you all doing out here? The woman who opened the door asked, looking at us all like we had a death wish. Get inside, quickly, before you attract more of them. And with that, we stepped into the home of the local scientist, Dr. Detra. Just as the door was about to shut behind me, I heard the sounds of groaning voices coming closer, and shuffling feet trudging up the steps behind us.
Too bad about your tripwire,
Randy said.
That thing would have worked like a charm on those guys.
The home of Dr. Raison Detra was full of plant life, I noticed as we climbed the steps up to the main level. It reminded me a bit of the abode of Poison Ivy's alter ego in Batman, and the woman seemed to match that description on a few different levels. Her reddish-brown hair and tall stature were her most prominent features, and she looked at us through a pair of glasses once we were up in the kitchen. What on earth were you doing outside in the middle of the night? During a plant zombie outbreak, Sheriff? You could have been killed or worse. You could have become one of those... She suddenly stopped, looked at Randy with his bitten arm, then at the two children with tear-filled eyes. Dr. Detra was always good at coming to swift conclusions through the process of deduction, and didn't finish her thought out loud. Never mind. Let's get you dried off and out of those disgusting clothes. You're dripping it everywhere, by the way. Open Circuit, would you clean up this mess, please? A robot, which reminded me a bit of something out of Minecraft, emerged from the other room. His blocky shape looked to be by design rather than out of necessity, and I couldn't help but admire the little guy's programming as he quickly sucked up the water on the floor, moving down the stairs towards the back door effortlessly. Remove 100 cc's for research purposes and incinerate the rest, Open Circuit. Then meet us in the lab. We could use your help on this. On it, Doctor. Open Circuit is a creation of mine. Perhaps you've met Clue 404 as well, she asked with a smile. Holy shit, Randy said, then looked at the kids and covered his mouth. Sorry, kids, but you're the one who tried to bust us out of prison? Back when we got caught up in that high-tech mega jail? Yes, that was a plan which I devised, although it did not turn out the way I'd hoped. Perhaps due to some electronic wizardry employed within that prison. An EMP or something of that nature. Clue 404 is doing much better now, by the way. I'm sorry about how he shut down right in the middle of the escape plan, but you never know how an android is going to function until they get out into the dangers of the real world. Hey, it's the thought that counts. And we did get out of there eventually. Right this way, she said, leading us into her laboratory. There were a few screens set up in the corners of the large room, acting as dividers. She gave us some spare clothes out of a wardrobe nearby and sent us all to get changed. Meanwhile, Open Circuit followed along behind us, vacuuming up our wet footprints. He seemed to be shaking his head as if annoyed that he was being asked to perform such menial labor. I was programmed to do theoretical equations in quantum physics, and to design complex biomechanical constructs, he said, shaking his head. Of course I'm annoyed. I realized then that he was also telepathic, and decided to leave it at that. After getting dried off and changing out of our wet clothing, we all met back up in the center of the laboratory with Dr. Detra. She seemed intent on discussing something with us, and waited for Open Circuit to join us. I've got some ice cream in the kitchen. Why don't you kids go see if you can find it? She said, smiling at the two potential orphans. Bonus points if you can locate the waffle cones. Hint, they have sprinkles on them. The two kids actually surprised me by giggling and running off into the kitchen. Even through all of this, they were holding strong. What troopers? The only thing holding those two together right now is the hope that we can find a cure to this, Dr. Detra said grimly once they were out of earshot. So we all need to put our heads together. I've made some progress, but not enough to stop the outbreak in time. Look at the simulation. A holographic image appeared in front of us, showing Hollow's End in green. This was 3 hours ago, just before sundown. When the rain started, I said, remembering back to the forest and the clearing where the townspeople had gathered. So many had been infected there, and I couldn't help but think that if they'd just been at home or work, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. It was the worst-case scenario, though. Almost the whole town had been there, out in the open. It was a miracle we'd gotten away without becoming infected. Sure enough, the holographic image showed that same devastation, but sped up and in fast forward. It started with a few drops of red, and then pretty soon the whole town was a crimson puddle, with only a few remaining vestiges of green. And then, nothing at all. That's what the town will look like in 2 days, according to my projections. Clue, Open Circuit, and I have been working on a cure. Clue is up on the roof right now gathering more samples, actually. But so far, we've not had any major breakthroughs. Between the three of us, we should have been able to figure it out, but we haven't had any real success. Well, that sucks. If you do figure out a cure, sign me up to be your guinea pig, Randy said. Oh, hell. Boss, all of a sudden I'm not feeling so hot. I turned to see my deputy was starting to turn gray in the face, and his eyes were changing into that sickly green shade flecked with gold. Not just the irises either. The whites of his eyes were likewise changing into that strange, disgusting Hulk shade. I think I better sit down. Randy trailed off as he swooned, falling unconscious to the floor. Well, that's not good, I said, looking at my deputy on the ground. How much time do we have? I would say an hour or two at most before the virus completely takes over his central nervous system. It multiplies rapidly. I've never seen anything like it. Here, help me get him up onto this table. She swept her papers and everything off the steel table with a swoop of her arm, and the two of us lifted Randy up onto it. What happened? The kids ran out of the kitchen, their mouths smeared with chocolate ice cream. We heard a bang. It's okay, I said. He just had a little fall. He's taking a bit of a nap right now, that's all. Is he dead? Wendy asked, licking the ice cream cone in her hand. No, he's not dead. We're gonna get him fixed up in no time, okay? Go on back to the kitchen, kids. The grown-ups need to talk for a bit longer. They did as I asked, and the two of us got back to our discussion, now with Randy lying on a steel table beside us. His wound had a strange look to it, as if moss were growing in it. Whoa, that's weird, I said, pointing at it. Dr. Detra gasped when she saw it. Then, without hesitating, she pulled out a scalpel. She sliced off a small piece of the moss which was growing around Randy's wound. The vegetation hissed like a cat, and the tiny sprouts waved in the air aggressively when she did so. Oh, hush, she scolded, then put the sample into a petri dish. She held it under a microscope and looked at it carefully. Interesting. Very interesting. Open Circuit, come see this. The android came over and raised its head up into the air on an extendable neck, then looked into the microscope. Just then, Clue 404 came into the lab, returning with his collection of samples from the roof. I hadn't seen the android since he tried to break us out of prison, and gave him a hug out of sheer gratitude. Hey, Clue, good to see you. You as well, Sheriff. It has been a minute. Yeah, just wish it was under better circumstances. But as always, nothing's ever normal in Hollow's End. This is true, he said, handing the doctor a few test tubes. I have several different samples, Dr. Detra. They are labeled as requested, according to their source. These might not be necessary anymore, Clue, she said, sounding excited. Look at his wound. It's bryophyta. See? I put it under the microscope. The android went over to look as Open Circuit stepped away from the microscope. Non-vascular, the smaller android said as Clue put his eye up to the instrument. We never imagined that it could be using the vasculature of its host for the purposes of energy production. The mitochondria are powerful, Clue said. An alien species like this could latch on and harness them for their own purposes, depriving the host cells of energy and forcing them into dormancy. If that's true, that means they can be saved, Dr. Detra concluded. We just need to find a way to clear those damn clouds. Huh? I blurted. Sorry, I'm not following. She looked at me as if she'd forgotten I was there, then motioned to the holographic display. Computer, interpose new bryophyta predictions, then remove cloud cover for 100% visibility. The image on the hologram in front of us changed, showing the red color of the town slowly fading, then changing back to its original green shade. Moss needs darkness to grow, Sheriff, she said, pulling over a bright lamp. She flicked a switch on the side, and the glow of it changed, becoming stronger. Too much light, and it dies. I looked at Randy's arm and saw the mossy growth around his wound was withering and turning black. It was dying in the light. We have 6 hours until sunrise, Sheriff, Dr. Detra said, looking at her watch, which means we've got 6 hours to figure out how to clear those clouds and get the sun shining down on Hollow's End again. Dr. Detra and I stood in her laboratory watching Randy, hoping he would be cured by the UV light. If her predictions were right, then the whole town could be returned to normal using the same method. Meaning that if we could clear those strange green clouds in the sky and get the sun shining again, everyone would return to normal. But it was still yet to be proven. Randy was our guinea pig. The mossy growth around his wound had retreated and turned black, shriveling up until it looked dead. But he was still unconscious, and there was no way of knowing if he would turn back into his normal, ridiculous, drunken self. Doctor, intruders are surrounding the house. Exterior defenses are being overrun. Concentrated assault now focused on our residents. Damn, do you have any idea what this means? Dr. Detra asked me gravely. No, what? There won't be time for us to have any ice cream. She went rummaging through a nearby drawer. She pulled out a pair of noise-canceling headphones and put them on Randy's head. She turned on some music and raised the volume, and I could hear it blasting from the headphones into Randy's ears, probably giving him permanent hearing damage. This is bad. I should have guessed they share a telepathic hive mind intelligence. Randy is a fly on the wall for them right now. They've been listening to every word we've been saying. Oh no. Does that mean? Yes, they know our plan, and they're actively trying to stop us from achieving it now. We need to get out of here immediately. The zombies are just the beginning. The chompers will be next. They can tunnel underground, and they're going to be headed this way as we speak. So, what do? We can't exactly run. They got the place surrounded. I've always got an escape plan. Don't worry, Sheriff, she said. Grab the lamp. Try to keep it trained on the wound at all times. Clue, Open Circuit, can you get the table with the deputy? Kids, come on, we need to get out of here. Ronald and Wendy joined us back in the laboratory, looking scared and on edge once again. Dr. Detra tried her best to reassure them, taking their hands as she led us out of the lab. Open Circuit sighed with obvious exasperation, but did as he'd been asked and grabbed one end of the table. Clue took the other end while I picked up the UV lamp, keeping it pointed at Randy. He was now strapped down, which was to ensure our own safety, but it also helped to keep him from sliding off the table as we ran out of the laboratory and down the hall, following Dr. Detra. This way, we don't have much time, she said, and at that exact moment I heard a window breaking, and the sound of a wall breaking down. Perimeter breach, the loud voice of the computer said from above us. Interior defenses activated. Please proceed to the aircraft hangar for evacuation. Aircraft hangar? My ass stunned. This house was a small backsplit in a little neighborhood. It appeared to be the same as all the other surrounding homes when viewed from outside. There was no way there was room for... The doctor pushed a button on the wall, breaking me from my incredulous thoughts and opening up an invisible door hidden behind a bookshelf. We stepped through the threshold, finding ourselves in a massive aircraft hangar, which looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Like I said, I always have an escape plan, Dr. Detra said, turning around with a smile. That was when Randy startled all of us by springing awake and screaming at us angrily. "Holy shit, kill it, kill it!" I yelled out of instinct. Then I realized he wasn't a zombie anymore. "What the hell's the matter with you guys? You got me strapped down like a science experiment over here. Get me out of these shackles." Zombies were crashing through the house, getting closer by the second. But we took a moment to let my deputy out of the straps, which were holding down his arms and legs. "I'm so glad you're okay, buddy," I said, giving Randy a hug once he was free. "Some way of showing it. Tie me up like I'm going to turn plant zombie on you. Hey, look at that. The bite wound is healing all on its own. Maybe I do have superpowers after all, boss. Holy shit. Am I Wolverine? Deadpool? I think I am." "Can you nerds talk about comic books later?" the robotic voice of the house computer said from above. I looked to see Dr. Detra smiling triumphantly. "Don't you realize what this means? It works. The cure works. And hey, the computer's got a mind of her own, so don't blame me for the sick burn she's laying down. Now come on, let's get out of here." Less than a minute later, we were up in the air, and I was amazed at the technology this woman possessed, hidden in her own home. Hollow's End really never ceased to surprise me. This town got stranger every day I lived here. This woman wasn't Poison Ivy. She was fucking Batman. The ship was similar to a helicopter, but without a rotor blade on top. Instead, it moved about using thrusters, which were mounted on both sides of the hull like a Harrier jet. "I'm going to bring us up above the clouds to take a better look at this anomaly," Dr. Detra said, making the aircraft descend. "It's almost midnight," I said, looking at my watch. "Not to rush you or anything, but after we check it out, can we head over to the town hall? There's some people waiting for us." "I don't see why not. Randy should no longer be sending any telepathic information to the hive mind, now that he's been cured." "Tell a what now?" Randy asked, pulling out his hip flask. "Who's got a hive mind now?" "The zombies, Randy. Try to keep up." "Yeah, Randy," said Ronald, eating a cookie he'd pocketed back at the house. "Keep up. It's a super intelligent hive mind, dummy." "Hey, you guys got cookies? Give me one." Ronald stuck out his tongue, splitting the last bite with his sister. "Last one." Man, as if this day couldn't get any worse. As we ascended up above the clouds, we looked down at the green mess which covered Hollow's End like a mossy growth. And up above it all was another cloud. This one was gray, and shaped like a monkey's paw, palm down and blocking the sun's rays. "Son of a bitch," I said, looking at the cloud. "Man, those monkey paws are stubborn bastards," Randy said, shaking his head. "I curse the guy who brought those into Hollow's End." "You mean you?" "Hey, I just found the thing, okay? And besides, let's not start playing the blame game. The important thing is fixing it now." "Can you please explain?" Ronald asked. "We don't live in this weird-ass town, remember?" Randy and I looked at each other for a few seconds, as if having a psychic debate over who should explain this ridiculous predicament. But then eventually I relented. "Okay, to make a very long story relatively short, here goes. Randy got a magical monkey paw, which I think he found in a shipment of meat, but who knows who really put it there. Anyways, if you know anything about monkey paws, you'll know they grant wishes." The two kids looked surprised and amazed, but not the good kind. These monkey paw wishes always come with a curse, and the bigger the wish, the bigger the curse. "Oh," Ronald said. "I still don't understand." Randy made a lot of wishes, and they all had consequences. Terrible consequences. But his wishes weren't huge. They were relatively small for the most part. But when we were kidnapped by an evil maniac and his mom broke us out of prison with the monkey paw, she made a big wish. She wished to get rid of the jail, to make it evaporate into nothing, and with it all the employees of that mega corporation that was trying to do so much evil. Bad people who would have destroyed the planet. Killed a lot of people. But that was a really big wish, and I was standing there when it happened. Everything went up in dust, floating away into the sky and blowing up into the atmosphere. Like how lake water evaporates into the sky and turns into clouds. This stuff evaporated into the atmosphere above us, and hence the green storm cloud that makes plant zombies and those piranha-headed vine creatures, Randy summarized. "Holy shit," Wendy said. It was the most words she'd spoken since I'd met her. "That's weird as hell, guys." "Yeah, that's Hollow's End for you. And watch your language, Wendy. We're watching you until your parents get cured, and I'm sure they wouldn't want to hear you talking like that. Okay. So how does this change our plans, Doc? Are we still approaching this the same way? I don't think we can, Dr. Detra responded. If this is a problem based in magic, it needs a magical solution, not a scientific one. This cloud isn't moving based on wind speed or anything like that. It's staying right over Hollow's End for a reason, and I don't think it's going anywhere. But if we can get rid of it, the sunlight will still heal everybody, right? Theoretically, yes, but there's no possible way I can think of that would... Leave that part to me, Doctor. I think I might have an idea. We entered the town hall a short while later, arriving just after midnight. As we went down the aisle towards the stage, I saw a tall white ferret dressed in a military uniform standing at the pulpit. There was a smaller white ferret dressed in similar military garb standing next to him, and I recognized the two immediately as Squish and Baby Squish, two formidable foes for any plant zombies, and I wasn't surprised to see they made it through the onslaught. After some serious ass kickery, Baby Squish, Wendigo, Max, Vega, and I were able to wrangle up those frickin' plant zombies, and we corralled them into that big outdoor pen in the field at the Whit Farm. Anyways, there's a few hundred of them out there, in case we find a cure for this virus. Okay, the big guy's here, so I'll pass over the microphone to the sheriff now, since he's just arrived, and looks like he's got something to say. Thanks, Squishy, I said, taking the microphone. Then, quietly, with the mic covered, you wrangled a few hundred zombies into the sheep pen? Really? Nice job, dude. After a quick fist bump, he went back across the stage to join the rest of his militia members, who had clearly been doing a bang-up job of cleaning up the streets, and with minimal casualties, which meant we had a real chance of saving some lives today, if we could figure out a plan, that was. We figured out how to cure the infection, I said to the townspeople who had gathered. There were at least 100 of them that I could see, and I recognized most, but not all of them. A large portion of the town had not made it here tonight, and I couldn't help but picture Dr. Detra's map and that color of red infection spreading across the town. The townspeople stood up to cheer at that announcement, but I wasn't finished, and it wasn't going to get any easier. Please, I said. Please, wait until I'm done speaking before celebrating. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but there's a lot to do, and we haven't yet solved this crisis, so please, take a seat, everyone. The townspeople did as I asked, and looked a bit dejected after their brief bout of excitement. I tried my best to keep them with me. I would need all of their help for what was to come next, whatever it might be. I thought you found a cure, someone shouted amidst the silence. We did, that's true. The sun is the cure to the infection. If we can clear the bad weather and get the sun shining down on all the people who were hit by the virus, we can cure them. That's great, someone in the crowd shouted as excited chattering began again. That means we just have to wait for the storm to pass. The problem will solve itself. I held up my hands, asking for silence, and eventually received it. I wish it were that simple, but this is not an ordinary storm, and those are not ordinary clouds. We were just up there looking at it using an advanced aircraft, courtesy of Dr. Detra, and it's not moving like any regular storm would, blowing over with the wind. I left out the part about the magical monkey paw cloud, since the whole town knew Randy had been responsible for that fiasco, and I was subsequently associated with it as well. This is clearly the work of some powerful magic, not science. This isn't a cloud that will just pass us over or evaporate on its own. Hollow's End will be stuck permanently in this rain until we can find a solution for this. We need a way to destroy the cloud, to get rid of it somehow. There was a lot of murmuring and some dissent after those words, as not everyone agreed with me. One man named Derek Prey stood up and spoke loudly. I recognized him as a brilliant scientist, one who worked closely with Dr. Detra in the past. I'm sure there's a scientific solution to all this. Between Dr. Detra and I, not to mention all the other scientists in town, we could figure this out if we put our heads together. I have a schematic drawn up at home for a device which would... I'm sorry, Dr. Prey, Dr. Detra interrupted. There's nothing we can do for this. Trust me, I've looked at it from every angle, and the only solution for this is a supernatural one. Science can't defeat magic. It can only be beaten by stronger magic. It would be like trying to extinguish a sorcerer's fireball with a fire extinguisher. And we all know how that turned out when Xavier accidentally set his house on fire. Magic is not my area of expertise, so I will have to defer to someone else. He thought about this, then bowed his head slightly and sat down. Please continue. I'm not convinced, but I'll hear you out. I thought about what to say next and realized I didn't have anything solid. I knew we needed to find someone powerful enough to get rid of the cloud using magic, but I didn't know anyone who actually fit that description. Does anyone here know magic? I asked. Is there a powerful sorcerer or something of that nature in the crowd here tonight? I know most of you, but not all of you. I'm still relatively new to town, after all. Could some of the magical beings here please introduce yourselves? No one said anything for a long time. At least 30 seconds passed, but it felt like an hour.
Magical beings are mysterious buggers,
Randy whispered in my ear.
They're real secretive like.
I was starting to think no one would say anything, and that we'd be back to square one. The giant room was completely silent. So quiet you could hear a pin drop. My armpits were getting so sweaty I could feel the moisture running down my side, into my pants. I felt more uncomfortable than I have ever felt in my entire life. But then a little gremlin wandered onto the stage, puked on my shoes, and made me feel even more uncomfortable.
I'm Zero,
he said.
I'm a magical little gremlin.
After a few seconds, I managed to formulate a response. I spoke while trying to discreetly kick the vomit off of my shoe. Some of it went flying and splattered an audience member in the face. I pretended I didn't notice out of embarrassment. Gromlin? Don't you mean gremlin?
That's what I said. Gromlin.
Okay, Zero. Can you tell me a little bit about your magical abilities? Do you have anything that can clear a giant poisonous cloud? They threw up on my shoes again, but it was mostly bile this time.
Nope. I mostly do magic for kids' shows. You know, birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, graduation, stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you, Zero. I'll, let you know if we need you. Anyone else?
I did a Christmas party once,
the little gremlin said, wandering off the stage in the opposite direction from where they'd entered. Anyone at all? A tall, furry, horned creature with glowing blue eyes stood up in the crowd.
I am the Wendigo. I am a magical creature, in the sense that I am contrived by magic. But I am not able to do anything to help. Still, just thought I'd introduce myself. We haven't met since I live in the woods.
All right, that's cool. Nice to meet you, Mr. Wendigo, I said as politely as I could, not wanting him to eat me. He was right there in the front row, like way too close for comfort. A woman with green-tinted skin, horns, and glowing eyes stood up and spoke next. I am Windy Burns. Although I don't personally possess the power to do such a thing, I do know of one who does. He resides in Hollow's End, upon Crescent's Peak. The other magical creatures turned to look at her, stunned.
You can't possibly mean. We can't trust him.
She silenced the rest of them with a long stare. I realized this woman was probably one of the more powerful magical beings in the room, and the fact that she couldn't get rid of this cloud said a lot. I have studied this phenomenon as well, and I agree it is the result of powerful magic, not of this world. The only one I know capable of vanquishing such a thing is Theodore. The crowd gasped at the name. Personally, I was expecting something a little more ominous. Theodore? I asked. Like as in Ted for short?
Yes,
she hissed.
And don't speak his name aloud, for he will hear you.
Right. Sorry.
He is a mighty wizard, capable of great feats. But I am on his shit list. I doubt he would want to listen to me.
I thought about this for a few seconds. Do you know where this place is? I asked Dr. Detra. She nodded, looking nervous. Yes, I know of it, but it is not a good place or a safe one. Ted is easily angered, and he values his privacy more than anything. He might consider it such an insult that we came knocking on his door that he kills us on the spot. Well, that's a chance we're going to have to take. Randy was already trying to escape. I grabbed him by his shirt collar and pulled him back.
Hey, what the hell, man? I didn't sign up for this shit. You can't pay me enough to go up to Crescent Peak. That place is bad news.
You're going. We're all going. Except for the kids. Ronald and Wendy groaned loudly, annoyed at being left out of the life-threatening mission. No whining. We're keeping you two safe, first and foremost. Muriel, can you watch them for a few hours? I asked, seeing the elderly woman in the front row. If there was anyone I could trust the kids with, it was her. Jay's grandmother was not only very sweet and kind to children, but she could take care of herself. and them in the event of a zombie attack.
Of course, dear,
she said, coming up onto the stage and taking the kids' hands.
Come along, you two. Let me ask you, have you ever made a knife out of a toothbrush before?
No.
Well, it's high time you learned. A well-placed toothbrush shiv can penetrate a zombie's brain through the ear canal in a pinch. You'll want to carry at least one or two in case you drop your primary weapon or it gets lodged in someone's skull.
I wondered if I'd made the right decision as they walked away out of earshot, but it was too late to second-guess these things now. Squishy, do you think you can round up a team of the best and get as many zombie citizens as you can into that sheep pen at Whit Farm? I know there's a good-sized crowd of infected in the playhouse downtown, already contained. We get them out in the open for when the clouds start to clear, and the rest should take care of itself.
You got it, Sheriff,
he said, taking Baby Squish by the hand.
Current time is 0100 hours. We'll get those sons of bitches out into the pen before 0600 so they're ready for the sunrise.
Best part of waking up is zombies getting blap blap blapped, Baby Squish sang, smiling.
No blap blap blap, Squishy said, correcting her. These are curable zombies, not Evil Dead zombies. Maybe next time, okay?
The little ferret scowled. Okay, who's on your team? I asked him. He didn't have to think about it for long.
Chase Kingsley's a no-brainer. That darn fox is a former SWAT officer. He can handle himself in a pinch. And I'll take Windy Burns, Max, the Wendigo, plus New Vega. The 6 of us will form Strike Team Alpha. Bryce, can you put together another team to back us up?
The ghoul and shapeshifter militia from earlier appeared nearby, and I realized they'd been blending in as curtains and chairs, and somehow also the podium we'd been speaking at.
You got it, Squishy. We'll back you up, no problem.
I looked at Randy and Dr. Detra. Are you two ready? Let's go finish this thing. My deputy looked uncertain, but Dr. Detra had enough resolve for the 3 of us. I'm ready, Sheriff, she said. This cloud has rained on its last parade. After a short flight, courtesy of Dr. Detra, Randy and I found ourselves at the gates of an imposing castle, reminiscent of the ancestral home of Vlad the Impaler. Stay safe in there. I'll be listening, and I'll do what I can to help if things get bad, the doctor said before closing the door to the aircraft from the inside. A moment later, her voice was speaking in our ears, using the communication devices she'd given us. Thank you, Dr. Detra, for everything. We'll do our best to convince this guy to help the town. Sounds like he's our only hope at this point. Unless we do my plan, Randy said. Find another monkey paw somewhere and wish this problem away. It's so simple, really. We're definitely not going to do that. That's how we got into this whole mess in the first place. We can't just keep wishing away our problems. One of these days, we're going to have to actually deal with them ourselves. So your solution is to walk up to this big creepy castle and ask this dude to solve them for us? Because trust me, this guy ain't going to help shit. He's probably just going to kill us and turn us into unwelcome mats for his front porch. You know, like a bearskin rug, but made of people. I sighed, trying to explain this to him again in a way he'd understand. But then a voice was speaking to us through the intercom to my right. Hello, who's there? The voice sounded younger, like someone in their 20s or 30s, but nothing like the voice of the old wizard who I had expected to answer. Hi, I said awkwardly. We're looking to speak to Theodore. Is he home? There was a long pause. Theodore? Really? Are you sure? Yeah, we need to talk to him about saving the town. We need his help. He's the only one who can... There was a loud buzz, and then the gate swung open in front of us. Come on in, the voice said. Good luck. You guys are going to need it. The walkway in front of us was crumbling and ancient, with a strong wind whipping across the wet cobblestones constantly. There was a lake to our right, and the wind was cold off the water. We shielded our eyes from the rain, but I still couldn't help but notice the carrion birds all around. Vultures, crows, ravens, and other scavenging birds of all kinds were hovering over us far above, as if waiting for our inevitable demise. They seemed unaffected by the rain, and for the first time I considered the fact that this sickness seemed to specifically target humans. No animals were affected by it. Dude, this is such a terrible idea. How did I let you talk me into this? Randy muttered, sipping from his flask. I smacked it out of his hand with a little more aggression than I intended. But at that moment, I was pissed. Seriously? Can you stay sober for 10 minutes? The whole town's at stake, Randy. I can't believe you could be getting wasted at a time like this. Actually, never mind. I 100% believe it. You're constantly getting drunk at the most inopportune moments, especially when I need your help the most.
Like when?
Like always.
That doesn't sound like me. I can't think of a single time when...
Before we could get into it further, I saw a figure walking toward us. I guessed it was the same person who had spoken to us through the intercom. They approached us carefully and took us in with a curious look. Long, curly dark hair framed a pale face untouched by sun, and a black duster jacket completed the gothic look, matching the castle in the near distance. "I'm Gemstar," they said. "Theodore is my father. I haven't told him you're here yet, but he has likely sensed your presence. No one comes onto the property without his knowledge, and his spies are everywhere. Be careful of the words you speak." The crows, ravens, and other birds were perched very close by, watching us. "We need his help," I said. "Like I told you before, he's the only one who can help us." Gemstar laughed at this as if it were a joke. "Help? You come to him for help? Brave, but stupid. Very well, follow me." We encountered several traps along the way to the front door, which Gemstar disabled one after the next, using magic by the looks of it. A broken cobblestone, which activated poison darts. A trap door that yawned open, revealing a drop down into an infinite abyss. A switch that opened the cage of a hungry-looking bear, and a few other deceptions that looked somehow even nastier. There wasn't much conversation, and I guessed it was due to the likelihood of spies listening to us. I wondered briefly if Gemstar sympathized with us, and would help us convince Theodore, or if this was all just a long walk towards our inevitable death. My legs were shaking with nervousness, and as much as I tried to hide my fear, I couldn't quite manage it as we approached the front door of the castle. It stood impossibly high above us now, towering over the three of us, with twisting spires and wrought iron bars across the windows. This place was shouting at visitors to stay away. Even the front door looked like the yawning mouth of a hungry dragon ready to eat us. Thunder crashed above us in the night sky, and I noticed the rain was pattering down on the ground up here as well, making puddles which stood here and there. The birds avoided these patches, staying away from them, but there were no signs of zombies or killer plants. The front door of the castle swung open in front of us, and Gemstar walked in first. Randy and I followed behind, taking small, nervous steps.
"I don't like this, dude," Randy said again. "Feels like a trap."
I couldn't agree more, but it wasn't like we had a choice. Inside the dusty foyer, it looked even more like a castle from an old horror movie. Maroon velvet curtains and pendants hung from above, emblazoned with an eerie symbol I didn't recognize. An eye with a swirling pupil. A fire was burning in the fireplace, and I saw suits of armor and stately portraits on the walls, decorating the expansive room. And then my eyes settled on a figure sitting in a chair before the fire. A long white hand was flipping through the pages of an ancient text, reading it at impossible speed. A low sigh emanated from the man, and he closed the book with an irritated slam of the cover, then slapped it down onto the table in front of him. Dust clouded the air from the impact like a smoke bomb, filling my vision and making it impossible to see where he had been. But then a second later, he was beside me, inches away, despite the fact that such a thing was impossible.
"I see my heir has allowed you inside, and without my permission."
Gemstar looked at the floor, but didn't move.
"What precisely could you think you would gain by coming here?"
I began to stutter a response, but was promptly interrupted by the man.
"Speak up! What do you want from me, you worthless degenerates?"
"We need your help," I managed to say, mustering every ounce of sheriff authority that I could manage. "My name is Sheriff Parsons, and I'm asking you on behalf of everyone in Hollow's End. Please. We need your help getting rid of this poisonous cloud that's been raining on us since sunset. It turns people into zombies, makes plants come to life and eat people. It's magic from what we understand, and none of us can figure out how to get it to go away."
"Such trivialities are hardly my concern."
"But wait."
"No. I've heard you, and my answer is no. I will not help you. You brought this upon yourselves."
Randy started to turn around and leave, saying, "Okay, sounds good. We tried. Now let's leave with our lives intact, shall we?" But I grabbed him by the shirt sleeve and pulled him back. "Wait, what do you mean we brought this upon ourselves?" I asked. Of course, I knew exactly what he meant, since we had totally brought this upon ourselves, but I was curious how he knew it. The man was a hermit up here, There was no way he could know about our countless mistakes and ineptitudes. He didn't take the bait, instead just smiling at me ruefully.
"Leave,"
he commanded.
"before I do something nasty."
Puzzle pieces began to click into place in my mind, and suddenly I realized something. You. It was you all along, from the very beginning. You're the one who planted the monkey paw in that meat shipment. You're the one who started all of these horrible B-horror movie shenanigans. He didn't even try to deny it, just laughing at me maniacally.
"Like I said, you brought this upon yourselves. All I did was give you a little nudge in the right direction."
Randy's face was turning red with rage. It looked like he was ready to snap.
"Wait a minute. You're fucking serious here, aren't you?
You're the one who brought that cursed monkey paw into town? The one that I made all those badass wishes on that unsuspectingly turned nasty?"
Why, oh why, would I ever admit to such a thing? But, speaking hypothetically, it would be an absolutely devilish way to get all of you scum out of my way. To clear the weeds from the gardens that the roses may grow.
But why? Why would you care about the town? You don't even come into Hollow's End. You just stay up here on this creepy horror movie hill in your creepy horror movie castle.
True. So true indeed. But there is so much power hidden beneath your little town. I have access to some of it from here, yes. A trickle makes its way into my walls, and I feed upon it, building my power, growing stronger and stronger by the day. But I would have so much more power if you were all gone. I would have it all to myself. I will have it all to myself.
He began to levitate, rising up into the air above us. It was truly terrifying as lightning began to crackle and sprout from his fingertips, the light of the fire reflecting in his eyes. Randy was already attempting to open the door and run outside, but it slammed shut quickly, leaving his grasp. "Hang on a minute," I stuttered, feeling more terrified than ever before. "Let's talk about this. Or better yet, we'll just leave. We shouldn't have come here. We shouldn't have bothered you.
I told you so, you numbskull," Randy shouted. "Now look what you did. We're gonna die here because you had to be a goddamn Boy Scout again."
I was about to say something snappy in response, but before I could, I was thrown against the wall beside the fireplace by an invisible force. Randy joined me there an instant later, and we stood pressed against the wall as if we were on the Gravitron at the fair. My entire body seemed to weigh 1,000,000,000,000 pounds, and it was difficult to breathe. Even my chest felt heavy. My lungs struggled against the weight, trying to suck in a strawful of air.
"You have defiled my home for the last time. And what's this? The two of you have a trickle of magic in you. A little piece of Hollow's End living in your blood. But when you die, I shall have it for myself. I will consume the power of each of you and take it for my own."
"Oh, is this like some sort of Highlander situation?" Randy managed to say against the powerful pressure weighing us down.
"Man, I love that show."
"Stop," a voice said suddenly, and I realized it was Gemstar after a few long moments. "Put them down, Dad."
"Quiet, insolent child. Go to your room. I will deal with you later."
"No, Dad." We began to droop down the wall slightly, and the crushing pressure eased off a little bit. I could breathe again, and it was a huge relief.
"What did you say to me, you ungrateful mutt?"
I looked to see Gemstar summoning their courage. Their pale eyes rose up to meet the eyes of Theodore. "I said put them down. Now." We dropped like a sack of stones, crumbling to the floor in a heap. I took in several heaving gasps of air, and the two of us watched the scene unfold before our eyes. The scene that would shape Hollow's End for decades. Centuries. Maybe even millennia. Gemstar cast off the dark duster jacket, revealing a glowing white gold robe. It shone with the light of the sun, casting a light upon the gloomy room and making it appear as if it were daytime. But the light did not hurt my eyes. For some reason, it didn't hurt at all. But Theodore seemed to be very much affected by it. He stumbled backwards, flailing, and bumped into the chair he was previously sitting in. The chair leg scraped across the floor, making a loud, abrupt sound, And in that instant, I realized that the student was now stronger than the master. The heir to this place had come into their own.
You ungrateful little shit,
Theodore spat, lifting the sleeve of his dark coat so that it covered his face. He looked like a vampire at that moment, and after seeing the long canines protruding from his gum line, I realized that was what he was. A vampire wizard. Huh. Who would have thought? You see something new every day in this town.
You dare to challenge me?
He growled.
You are nothing. I will crush you between my...
His voice cut off as the light from Gemstar increased, growing even stronger. You're not going to do anything except leave. Get out, Dad. You don't deserve this place anymore. You don't deserve this town and these people who care about each other so much. The dark wizard pushed forward against the light, trying to move towards Gemstar, but the glowing force kept pushing him backwards. He raged and screamed as he fought against it.
What would you know about them? You've lived here with me your entire life. You've never been outside the walls of this property.
Gemstar's smile stretched wider, showing a secret. Oh, but I have. I've been venturing into town for a while, Dad. To see the truth behind all the lies you told me. All my life you told me it was dangerous down there. That the sun would kill me. But I'm not like you. Mom wasn't like you. This last sentence seemed to carry some great burden of grief with it. I got the feeling that something very bad had happened to Gemstar's mother, and that Theodore was responsible for it.
Your mother was insolent, just like you. She didn't realize what she had here. She wanted to leave, constantly bickering, testing me, prodding me, the same as you.
Well, Dad, when she died, Mom left something for me. Something I've been hiding from you for a long, long time. The light from Gemstar turned as bright as the sun, and I saw it was emanating from a pendant around her neck. It glowed so bright that I had to cover my eyes with my hands. And even then, it broke through. But again, it didn't sting. It just felt like a pleasant, nurturing warmth. At least, for me, anyways. Theodore, on the other hand, well, his skin was smoking and sizzling, and he began to emit a shrill scream reminiscent of a kettle coming to a boil.
I will get you for this,
he spat.
I will kill you, just like I killed your mother.
And an instant later, he turned into a bat and flew away, disappearing through a window unprotected by glass. His frantic wing flaps looked pathetic and desperate as his tiny body let off steam, and I breathed a sigh of relief when he disappeared into the gloom outside. After several long moments of quiet contemplation, I let out a, "Thank you." "Sorry about your mother," I said next. "I'm sorry your dad is such an asshole." "Asshole doesn't even begin to cover it," Gemstar said as the glowing light faded to a more tolerable level. "Sorry he tried to kill you guys. Now, let's see what we can do about that poisonous death cloud." The pasture of Whit Farm in front of us was full of zombies. Not dozens or hundreds of them, but thousands. Almost the entirety of Hollow's End had turned into the undead. I saw my old friend, Mark from Earth, stumbling around, his arm around Jay the delivery guy. Momocado and Dante Kincaid, the fire chief, were near the fence, looking at us with green eyes. And I was somewhat surprised to see the two children who I had rescued were in there as well, with shallow bite marks on their wrists. "Seriously, Muriel? I trusted you with those kids for an hour and you couldn't keep them safe?" The old woman looked at me sheepishly.
I got distracted. But hey, it wasn't my fault. I didn't sign up to babysit. You forced it on me. They didn't even know how to make a shiv.
"Well, at least they got reunited with their parents," Randy said, seeing the kids stumbling towards a pair of adults. The four of them embraced in a shambling sort of group hug and then turned to look at us accusingly. "Why didn't you save us?" that look seemed to ask. "I'm working on it," I said out loud.
Huh?
"Nothing, just talking to myself. Gemstar, do you think your magic is strong enough to get rid of that cloud up there? Or was that just wishful thinking on my part?" Gemstar looked at me and smiled. "Sheriff, do you believe in fate?" I thought about this for a few seconds before answering. Once upon a time, I would have said no. I always thought myself as a free will type of person. Didn't like imagining that someone else could be pulling the strings. Now I'm squarely on the side of Team Fate. I can't help but think this is destiny. That we were meant to be standing here right now. I couldn't agree more, Sheriff. There's a very strong feeling inside of me that I was born for this. I didn't realize it until right now, but my entire life has been leading up to this moment. Maybe I can tell you more about that one day. But for now, let's get rid of this horrible cloud. Let's get the sun shining again. And just like that, Gemstar began to glow, even brighter than before. You might want to avert your eyes, Gemstar said, and Randy and I turned away. I saw the field of zombies shielding their vision as well, reflexively covering their faces with their hands as the brightness grew more and more intense. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few seconds, the glow began to dissipate. I was scared to look around at first. Scared to open my eyes. Afraid that the rain would still be falling. But then I felt the warmth of the sun instead of the trickling rain shining down on us from above. It felt like it had been ages since I'd felt that warmth and sensed that distinct brightness. Finally, I got the courage up to look at the sky, and I saw it was a bright, gorgeous blue color. There wasn't a single cloud up there, and it was going to be a sunny summer day by the looks of things. The field in front of me was no longer full of zombies, but regular, ordinary citizens of Hollow's End. Not that these folks could ever be labeled as ordinary, but you get the picture. Ronald and Wendy approached us with their parents in tow. Their faces were scared but hopeful, and I saw them glancing around at the bizarre crowd of monsters and people which filled the field. There was a low buzz of excited chatter all around, as people hugged their loved ones and talked amongst themselves. Those who had been human for the night sharing the details of their experience with those who had turned zombie early on the night prior. "Thanks for saving us all," little Ronald said, and I realized he was just in front of me now. "This is my mom and dad. They wanted to say thanks. And, can you let us out of here?" "Oh, sure, yeah, there's a gate just over here, I think," I said, leading the family over to the exit of the enclosed field. "From what I understand, you protected my kids for quite a while last night, Sheriff. Prior to some sort of mishap, I guess. But I do owe you somewhat of a debt of thanks." "More than somewhat, you ungrateful jerk," Randy muttered. "What was that?" "Nothing." "Sorry, I should introduce myself. My name is Harold, and this is my wife, Leanne." Randy stopped in his tracks and grabbed the sleeve of my shirt, pulling it hard enough to cause a slight tearing sound to come from the fabric. "Come on, dude, this is my only shirt." "Did you hear what he just said? His name is Harold, and her name is frickin' Leanne." The reality of this began to sink in slowly. If this was true, Randy actually did have powers of deduction. But that seemed very improbable, judging by his track record of idiocy. "Yes, those are our names," Harold said, sounding confused. "Can you please let us out of here now?" "You totally owe me $100, dude," Randy said. "A bet's a bet, and you lost." Randy and I walked the family of four back to their car, with Gemstar tagging along. I got the feeling there was something they weren't telling us, but I wasn't really sure what it was. Of course, when we got back to the gas station, the car was gone. "What the hell? Somebody stole it? This town's going to shit," Randy said, looking around the gas station for clues. "Nobody stole it. You called a tow truck, remember? Tom probably came and grabbed it." "Oh, yeah." "Don't worry, folks. We'll give him a quick call and get your car back for you. Just give us a few minutes." Randy pulled out his cell phone, and I heard him talking to Tom a few seconds later, explaining the situation. "Well, I suppose this is goodbye," Harold said. "You don't need to hang around, Sheriff. We've taken up enough of your time already. And it looks like you've got a town to put back together." "It's going to take a lot of elbow grease, but we'll get it done," I said, looking around at the wreckage of Hollow's End. Houses had been burnt down, smashed cars littered the streets, and more than a few dead bodies. Those who hadn't survived the carnage, or the ones that Randy had shot. They weren't starting to smell yet, but they would. Soon. "What do you say, Gemstar? Should we start heading back? Maybe you can work some of your magic to help rebuild the town." Randy ended his phone call as Gemstar stood there silently, looking like there was something still left to say. My deputy wandered back over and, for once, stayed silent. There was a tension in the air, and it was palpable. The family stood watching Gemstar and waiting for what would be said. "You can't leave," Gemstar said in a low, quiet voice. "I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way." A long silence followed before Harold spoke up. "Go stand over by the gas pumps, okay, kids? I gotta talk with these folks for a sec." He waited until they were out of earshot, and then spoke, much more gently than I thought he would under the circumstances. "What do you mean we can't leave?" "The town won't let you. This place is special. The longer you stay, the more it gets its hooks into you. Your family spent the night here. That's long enough." "I don't get it. I get this town is weird. I saw the monsters out in that field, talking to the humans as if it was all normal. I'm still processing all that. But I saw it. I can't unsee it. And after the events of last night, I'm more inclined to believe just about anything supernatural is possible. Still, why can't we just leave? We get in the car, we drive away. What's the problem?" Gemstar was quiet, as if thinking how to explain. "Do you actually understand how this place works?" Randy asked. "Can you tell me how to tap into my untapped magical potential and shit?" "Randy, these people are talking about something serious. We can ask Gemstar about your powers later." "It's all tied together," Gemstar said. "I think it's about time we had a long discussion, Randy. About your destiny, and what your powers will one day mean to this town." Tom, the tow truck driver, pulled up at that moment, and quietly observed the stoic group of us. He waved awkwardly, then lowered the family's car back down to the pavement. "If you try to leave, you won't get far. The hollow will pull you back." Harold looked suspicious, then said, "I don't know what that means, but we'll take our chances. We've got people waiting for us back home. Family, friends, jobs, school, you know how it is." Gemstar began to speak again, but he interrupted. "Look, I get this place is special. It's probably hard for you all to want to leave. You're so used to it here, right? But we're different. We need to go home." He didn't wait for a response, instead turning on his heel and pulling his wife along after him, grabbing her hand firmly. They left us there and went to gather up the kids. They all piled into the car and drove off a few moments later, without another word. But Ronald and Wendy waved goodbye to us from the back seat, behind the glass. "They'll be back," Gemstar said. "By tomorrow morning at the latest." "How do you know that?" I asked. "The same way I know how you came to be here, Sheriff. The same way I know how I was meant to save the town today. There's not just one kind of magic in Hollow's End, Sheriff. Much like the spectrum between light and dark, there are an infinite number of colors, and an infinite range of magic. But everything stems from the light, the opposite of the dark magic of my father, the hollow." In the distance, I heard the sound of Harold's tire blowing up, and the car slowly pulled over to the side of the road. They didn't even make it to the edge of town. "Did you ever wonder why they call this town Hollow's End?" Gemstar asked, smiling. "Because you might want to know the answer to that question before we start to rebuild." The ground suddenly began to shake violently. An earthquake, I wondered to myself. But if it was the shortest earthquake ever. Everything settled again after a second or two and was still. "What the hell was that?" I asked Gemstar nervously. The smile was gone now. "It's waking up," was the answer. Are you new to Hollow's End? Are you confused by the 2-hour-long travesty which you just experienced? Well, if you are, you may just want to check out the Hollow's End playlist, which will be showing up on your screen at the end of this video. Within that thing, you'll find the answers which you seek. Or maybe not. What do I know? Well, I guess one thing I do know for sure is who I want to thank for helping make this episode possible. The real-life citizens of Hollow's End. If you want to help support the channel and become a citizen of Hollow's End yourself, check out the Jordan Grupe Horror Patreon page and become a featured character, just like these fine folks. So head on over to patreon.com/Jordan Grupe Horror to see all the exclusive content and bonus videos that are over there. Or click the join button to become a channel member and you'll get early access and bonus videos. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And if you really loved it, maybe share it with somebody else who you really want to torment. It really does help out a lot. Alright everybody, that's it for today's episode of Hollow's End. See you next time.